You wake up slowly. No alarm, no buzzing phone sliding across a nightstand, just the gray light of dawn leaking through the trees and the soft sound of someone nearby stirring last night's fire back to life. You are not late for anything. There is nothing to be late for. For roughly 300,000 years, this was the morning of nearly every human who ever lived. We tend to imagine the deep past as a nightmare, brutal, desperate, a constant fight to survive, every day a coin flip between a full belly and an early grave. You picture your ancestors as exhausted, starving, terrified creatures clawing their way through a hostile world. But what if that picture is almost completely wrong? What if the average day for an ancient human looked less like a horror film and more like something you would quietly envy? To answer that, you have to understand who these people were. For the vast majority of human history, you were a hunter-gatherer. That simply means you got your food by hunting animals and gathering wild plants, instead of farming. No crops, no livestock, no grocery store. You took what the land offered, and you moved when it stopped offering. This is not guesswork. We can study it directly. In 1963, an anthropologist named Richard Borsche Lee traveled into the Kalahari Desert to live among the Jew Hwanzi, a group of people who were still living as foragers. An anthropologist is simply a scientist who studies how humans live and behave. Lee wanted to measure something that sounds almost silly. He wanted to know how many hours these people actually spent working to feed themselves. The answer stunned him. On average, adults spent somewhere between 15 and 20 hours a week finding food, not per day, per week. The rest of their time was spent resting, talking, visiting other camps, making tools, telling stories, and doing nothing in particular. Let that land for a second. People living in one of the harshest deserts on Earth, with no technology, were working less than half the hours you do at a modern job. And they still had food. A few years later, another anthropologist, Marshall Sahlins, gave this idea a name that made academics uncomfortable. He called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society. Affluent meaning rich. Rich not because they had more, but because they wanted less. And what little they wanted, the land already gave them. So, how is that even possible? How could doing less leave you better fed? Part of the answer is that you didn't carry the weight of survival alone. You lived in a band, a small group of maybe 20 to 50 people, almost all of them family or close kin. Food was shared, not hoarded. If you came back empty-handed today, someone else's catch fed you, because tomorrow it would be the other way around. Hunger was a problem the whole group solved together, not a private punishment for a bad day. And the work itself was not the grinding misery you imagine. Gathering plants, which provided most of the calories, was steady and social. Women and men moved through familiar land they had known since childhood, reading it like a book, picking berries, digging tubers, the starchy roots that grow underground, cracking nuts, talking the entire time. The hunting got the glory, but the gathering kept everyone alive. Now, let's actually reconstruct a day. Not in theory. In motion. You wake without urgency. The fire is already going. You eat something left from yesterday, maybe roasted roots, maybe dried meat. There is no rush, because the land will still be there in an hour. By mid-morning, small groups drift out. Some go looking for plants, walking a few miles across ground they've crossed 1,000 times. Others track animals, reading bent grass and fresh prints. You move at a human pace, in daylight, with people you have known your whole life. The anthropologist Frank Marlowe spent years living with the Hadza, a group in Tanzania who still forage today, and he watched this rhythm up close. The Hadza don't store much food. They get what they need, then stop. There is no concept of working ahead, of saving up vacation days, of grinding now to rest later. When enough is enough, the workday simply ends. By afternoon, you are back in camp. And here is where the real life of an ancient human happened. Not in the hunt, in the hours after it. This is where you'd expect them to be drained. They weren't. A scientist named Herman Pontzer wanted to test a stubborn assumption. Surely people who walk miles every day burn far more energy than a lazy modern office worker, right? He measured it directly in the Hadza, tracking exactly how many calories their bodies burned. The result rewrote the textbook. Their bodies burned roughly the same number of calories per day as yours does. Pontzer called this constrained energy expenditure, a fancy way of saying the human body quietly budgets its energy no matter how active you are. Your ancestors weren't running themselves into the ground. Their bodies wouldn't let them. So picture the camp as the sun drops. Children playing in loose, mixed age packs, watched by everyone and no one in particular. Adults repairing tools, stretching hides, grinding seeds. Easy talk, easy laughter. And then, as darkness falls, the fire becomes the center of the world. The anthropologist Polly Wiessner did something almost no one had thought to do. She recorded what the Jew Hoansi actually talked about, and she compared their daytime conversations to their nighttime ones. By day, the talk was practical. Complaints, plans, who did what, land, arguments. But at night, around the fire, everything changed. After dark, more than 80% of conversations became stories, tales of distant relatives, myths, the adventures of people long dead, songs. The firelight stretched the day and opened a door that daylight kept shut, a door into imagination, into memory, into the invisible threads that held the whole group together. Wiessner argued that this firelit talk was not idle chatter. It was how culture itself was built and passed down, night after night, for tens of thousands of years. Then you sleep. Not because a clock tells you to, because the dark and the warmth and the full belly tell you to. That was a normal day. Now here comes the part that should genuinely unsettle you. We have a story we tell ourselves about progress. We invented farming, the story goes, and finally life got better. More food, more security, more comfort. The great escape from a savage past. The bones tell a different story. When humans switched from foraging to farming, around 12,000 years ago, archaeologists can read what happened to their bodies in the skeletons left behind. And it is grim. Early farmers got shorter. Their teeth rotted. Their bones show signs of anemia, malnutrition, and brutal repetitive labor. New diseases jumped from crowded livestock into crowded humans. The scientist Jared Diamond went so far as to call the invention of agriculture the worst mistake in the history of the human race. Farming did not free humanity. At first, for the average person, it trapped them. It produced more food, yes, but it demanded relentless, back-breaking work. It tied you to one patch of dirt. It let a few people hoard grain and power while everyone else labored. The leisurely shared social rhythm of the forager was traded for something heavier, the to-do list. The harvest that can fail. The work that is never, ever finished. The anthropologist James Suzman, who spent years among the Jew Hoansi, put it plainly. For almost all of human history, people did not live to work. They worked, briefly, in order to live. The idea that a good life means being constantly busy is not ancient wisdom written into your bones. It is a recent invention, only a few thousand years old, and you inherited it without ever agreeing to it. So look at your own day. You wake to an alarm that overrides your body. You commute, you sit, you work 8 hours, often 9, often more, frequently alone, frequently for someone you will never meet. You eat quickly. You scroll through hundreds of strangers instead of talking to a handful of people you love. And when you finally rest at night, you feel a strange, hollow exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to cure. You have more food, more safety, and more comfort than any forager ever dreamed of. This is real, and it matters. But somewhere along the way, you also lost the unhurried mornings, the shared burden, the afternoons that belonged to you, the fire and the faces and the stories that told you exactly who you were and that you were not alone. Your body still remembers that older rhythm. It is why a long, slow meal with people you love feels like coming home. It is why a day spent walking in the open air resets something in you. It is why the happiest evenings of your life look suspiciously like a circle of friends around a fire, telling stories, going nowhere, in no hurry at all. That ancient human was not a desperate creature scraping to survive. That ancient human was you, before the alarm clock, before the calendar, before the endless list. And tomorrow, somewhere deep in your nervous system, a 300,000-year-old instinct will still be waiting. You will wake up slowly, if only you let yourself.